All right. If it's Tuesday, you know that can mean only one thing. It is time for you, me, and all of us to get together and talk about comic books at Comic Book School Live. We have a very special guest, and we are super excited to talk about the craft and business of making comics and what happens behind the scenes. But speaking of behind the scenes, let me bring my partner and a three-time Emmy Award-winning television writer, because we're going to be talking about Hollywood, Mike the Knife Fasolo.
Hi, bud.
Mike, how are you tonight? Mike, we're going to be talking a lot about Hollywood tonight. You actually relocated your human form out of the New York, New Jersey area to LA to pursue the dream.
I did, and it's very warm here, and it's very nice, and everybody should come at least for a visit.
How's that working out for you, though? The whole
It's moving along. It's not terrible. I'm not living in a $50 million mansion, but
you are living in a $2 to $3 million mansion, though.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Which is true. And speaking of living in mansions, direct from Portland, I'd like to welcome our guest, Brian Michael Bendis. I understand that you also live in a $2 to $3 million mansion. True or false?
False. I make comic books for a living.
Yeah, comic books are funny that way. They don't pay the 2 to 3 million, but you have to get that Hollywood money, right?
I'm doing okay. Everything's all right. All food's on the table. We're all right.
So, Brian, you're here to talk about a very special project, but we're going to go through a little bit of This Is Your Life type of review and have you comment on that. But we do have to have you out for a hard stop because you teach a class as well, don't you?
Yes, because I plan everything so well that right after this class, I go right into our Substack class where I will be hosting my dear friend David Mack live on the Substack. So yeah, it's a really interesting space that they created for us over at Substack where we can put out comics and do classes and all kinds of projects. So we've been doing that all year and I really love it. So yeah, hard out. Sorry about that, but we can continue.
We're happy to have you, and we're really excited to be talking about the book that you're putting out. Let's pull that up on the screen. Mike, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. Oh, look at that. He's got a copy of it.
I'm ready, buddy. I appreciate you making graphics.
Let's see that book again. Let's see that book.
Well, it just came from the printer, so I'm really excited to have it.
That is a work of art. I love it.
If you are a comic book fan, that you may have already figured out that Dark Horse is one of the companies that puts out the best collections, like the best produced, like beautifully printed collections. And one of the big wins of being over at Dark Horse now is these collections. It's just so beautiful. And I'm just so happy to put them out.
So let me just know the most important thing. Are you on the comp list as well?
Hell yeah. I feel you find that out early. Like, first of all, most people will pay you in comics before they pay you in cash. So the comps come before any money is transacted. So early on, and also my goal in life from an early age in Cleveland was, how do I get to see the movies before everybody else? And how do I get all the comic books for free? And then I found out this job allows both of those things to happen. And the bummer is that, like, it was so fun. Like, me and my friend, when we were like kids, we'd like, every time there was like some kind of press screening or an advance, like, come Tuesday to see the big hot movie that's coming out this weekend, advanced screening, we'd be there. And that would be so exciting to see the movie like 3 days before everybody else. And then now I'm in a situation where like I got to see Avengers before everybody else, but I couldn't tell anybody. Like it was like this, the blessing of my life also was the curse. You get all these things that you wanted, but you gotta yeah.
Sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to get all the free comps, Mike. Don't you miss when we were at Wizard? We got all the comps, Mike.
Oh, you did too. Yeah.
We got the comps from every comp, and we got the swag too, like the shirts, the whole every socks, whatever we needed.
Yeah,
it was all the wear taking.
How many of the free T-shirts do you still wear?
More than I'd like to admit. A little bit more.
I wear pretty much all of them.
Yeah, it's anything free. Mike and I liked. We enjoyed free.
I'm a big believer in it. There you go.
Big believer. So. We're going to be talking a little bit about the work that you've done. This is, it was a little hard to just find a representation of the biggest work that you've done. It just spans, it just goes on and on. Multiple awards, Eisners, and of course, probably your favorite of all, the Wizard Fan Awards, which you won.
I love my Wizard Fan Awards, and some of them even survived.
Do I remember this properly? Was this you that when you won a Wizard Fan Award, you called your wife on stage on the phone and shared that with her? I know somebody did that. You remember that?
Boy, I don't know. I'm sorry. That sounds like it could have been me, and it sounds like my wife was pregnant and I wanted to share the moment with her, kind of thing that I would have done. But I don't want to. We're getting to that age where our memories are cross-referencing each other. Like a friend of mine recently told me a story that happened to me as if it had happened to them, and I go, I told you that story. So we're at that age where that happens.
We
so
are.
I'll cop to it if it's true. If it's not, I'll happily defer. Again, as you said earlier, we're talking about like different communities and different. I grew up in Cleveland, where I'm not the only bald Brian who makes comics. There was Brian Azzarello, Brian K. Vaughan. It was very specific. So a lot of times we get confused for each other. I get so many compliments about Saga all the time.
And you accept it, right? You're like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I go, and you should buy my other book, Scarlet. I just pivot them on over to the stuff, and I'm assuming in return that Brian K. Vaughan gets a lot of shit about Civil War II.
I hope he takes credit for it. It looks like so. Jared is dialing in from Australia, right, Mike?
Oh, hi, Jared. I love Australia. Good Lord, I love Australia.
So Jared said that you can also stay at his house anytime you want, if you'd like.
I'll come over for a warm meal. Absolutely.
Rob says he writes comics but can't afford a mansion. I don't know.
I can't afford a mansion either.
Well, that's true. Me neither. And then Ponce just said it's good vibes. So speaking of good vibes, let's show where we are in the narrative. Brian, an influential writer. Many of your creations have both made it to the screen and or have influenced what was put up on the screen. And it started off here. And I have to tell you, I'm proud that I was early in discovering your work. Caliber was one of the companies that was sending us comps, and this immediately spoke to me. And I just thought, like, wow, here is somebody who's speaking that language of hard-boiled noir storytelling. You took it seriously, but of course, at that time, you drew a lot of it yourself. Which
I drew all of those.
It was amazing, and it's funny. You kind of learned how to draw. You built up this portfolio, and then you ended up working with the greatest artists on the planet, and didn't have to draw anymore as much.
Yeah, it worked out that way. It's very interesting, but I will say drawing all of these books as I did and trying to like fight my way through figuring out a style and all that, though I was doing it just to tell the story, it ended up being the best thing for me. So when I started collaborating for realsies with all these wonderful artists, some of which matched my aesthetic perfectly, some of which were completely different, I was able to communicate myself in a way I don't think I would have been able to if I hadn't drawn hundreds of pages myself. And also I found, like, even walking into the halls of Marvel, I didn't know it at the time, but they started talking to me with a lot of like respect that I was unfamiliar with, and someone had said to me, one of the editors had said, well, it's because you can do it all. And I go, what do you mean? They go, well, you can letter, you can color, I go, yeah, but not great. They go, yeah, but you can do it. And that makes your communication level much higher. So I was speaking with respect to people on a level because I did respect them, and that it was coming back to me. So it all worked out. I tell people who want to write for a living, yeah, go draw too. Go. Even if you can't, even if it's stick figures, go learn about the real estate of the page. Go figure out how much stuff you can fit on a page without it looking like crap, And then I also equate it to how many of my favorite directors are also accomplished actors. and not the actors who became directors, but directors who became actors like Scorsese and Sidney Pollack, where they started taking acting lessons because they wanted to speak to their actors in the language they understood, and then became obsessed with that form as well. Taika Waititi is a more modern example, whereas like it became part of their language. And I think that that's part of what's inside me, is that the artist in me represents itself in the writing.
And what you were doing was figuring out what worked on the page. And we find that the greatest artists of our generation are extremely intelligent and great at solving problems. They might not be able to explain what they do always, but you give them a problem on the page whenever you write a script, and then they solve that problem.
It's puzzle work. I mean, when I'm doing Legos or puzzle work, it feels the same. Like the same part of my brain is being poked at. So yeah, I agree with you. And it's also always interesting when a lot of my peers, including myself, very good on the page, not so good in public. Like we're very good in our little space. It's sometimes
that's exactly how everyone
hand you a marker and a pencil and you tell a story. It's a good puzzle is when Mike and I write something together. Like I'll write the first draft and then Mike has to figure out how to put it together as a story, because I didn't do that. I just put a bunch of scenes together. So, but what's great about this is this was the launch pad for what is, I think, the third publishing of this book. Is that right?
Oh no, it's on not to be braggy. It's like the eighth edition of this. It's constantly being in print since it came out, and we were talking a little bit about this before we went on the air. It was, I did these other comics, and they were able to sustain themselves, but Fortune and Glory was the first time that I really put myself out there, like, and people responded like on a personal level. Like that's a very different thing than here's a story and I'm sharing it with you. It's like, here's some shit that happened to me, and then people write me back, yeah, that shit happened to me too, and I know exactly who that dude is. Or even if it was really interesting too, there are Hollywood people that responded to it, but there are also people who had just been in shitty meetings. It was just like a testament to the shitty meeting we've all been in, where I thought I was in this meeting for one reason, I'm in the meeting for another reason. Doesn't even matter what the meeting's about. Can we just not do the meeting? Like can we just not continue this conversation? So that emotion seemed to really help people through some stuff. And that was,
when I reread this, Brian, it made me feel so much better about all the times that my options the phone stopped ringing. Mike is legitimately working in Hollywood as a screenwriter. It took me, what is it? Was your agents, Mike? Managers who basically, I don't know, we took a meeting, they complimented me a lot, and then we never heard from them again, right? They were very complimentary. They gave me water and everything.
Oh yeah, you hear the best compliments in your whole life. You're like, it fills you up, and then you go home and go, oh, that wasn't true.
Yeah, but I believed it to be true. Mike was like, don't take it to just, I'm like, but Mike, I'm walking on a cloud here. I might get my photo with the Hollywood sign. It didn't.
Like you're never going to hear from them.
I never heard from them again.
Yep. And again, that was something like I was in this space in my head where I'm just making the book because I had been through a lot of things that didn't pan out. I didn't understand them. I didn't really understand the world I was walking into, and I was frustrated by it. So I'm just going to write about that. I'm just going to like use my tools and work it out for myself. And to think that everyone else can relate to this wasn't in my head. It was just I'm going to blow off my steam. And then when I put it out, I said, "Oh, I'm deeply relating to people. What an experience!" And so I was so glad that I did it, and that 100% informed the choices that I made going forward and how I represent.
Fasolo, I found this book to be oddly cathartic because I went, okay, if it happened to him, then I shouldn't feel badly about it happening. Did it? You went through the same stuff, Mike. You'd be like, I go through it with Sony, and I'm like, awesome.
Yeah, it's the exact same thing. Even when you've had some success, somebody buys something, the next meeting is exactly the way it was the first time. You're just in there, and people are like, oh, they give you the big smile, and you're doing great, and we definitely love this idea, and then you never hear from them again. It goes. happens that exact way every single time.
Yes.
So,
Right.
we're all in agreement. Brian is also an educator. He's on the faculty at Portland, teaching with some very well-known comic creators. You can also see Diana Schutz there. He's published a book, Words for Pictures. You guys have seen me recommend this multiple times on the show. And tonight, right after this, he will be teaching his master class on Jinx World on Substack. It's a subscription-based service, but it is truly something to check out. Brian, what led you to become an educator?
Diana. I met Diana Schutz when I moved to Portland years ago. And if people don't know her name, you should Google it. She's one of the great names of all of comics. She has edited some of the greatest comics of all time by some of the great creators of all time. And we became friends actually in Australia. We became friends. We ran out a trip together, and she was one of the first people who kind of like took me under her wing when I was first making it. And it was so funny. I got a call. Hey, meet us. We're having lunch at this place in Portland. I go meet lunch, and it was her and the person that runs the comic studies program at Portland State. And they're like, and it was put to me this way: you're going to start teaching now. And it wasn't like, and I go, oh, what? And they go, they need you to teach, and you need to be a teacher. And I'm like, yeah, I also have kids and a job. Like, I don't know if I can. But then I went home and realized that I needed to do it. Also, Diana is one of those people. I'm sure you have them in your life too. There's a certain people, you just do whatever they say. They're never wrong. Like, yeah, you're okay. You got it. I'll figure it out later. But then I was, at the time, Walt Simonson, I was working with on something, and I also was in communication with Klaus Janson, and they're also both college professors. And then someone else in my life who I forgot was also teaching. Is like a lot of people in my life are teachers, and I go, oh shit. And so I called almost everybody, and I talked through, and it became clear I should just be teaching. And so I've been teaching at Portland State for 15 years. Wow. I teach comics writing mostly with David Walker. It's the two of us teaching together. Sometimes Taki Soma comes in instead of David. The master class is me and Taki together on Substack. And that class is less college education and more like adult education. And so we've been doing that for the last couple of months. It's been a great experience. Tonight, we're going to talk to our dear friend, David Mack. The other thing we do on Substack that I think fans of this and Words for Pictures would enjoy is we have a project called Creation. And it's what was to be the sequel of Words for Pictures, but I'm doing it differently. So every chapter is about the messy art of how we created something. Miles Morales, Riri Williams, Jinx, whatever you can think of, we take you through, here's how we created it. Because there's so few books on actual creation, because it's such a messy endeavor that even like teachers and great writers who love to share, the actual creation is so messy that people hate to share that part. It's like, here's all my guts, unformed nonsense. But it's in that, and it revolves around so much failure, like so much, oh, that doesn't work, that people just don't want to share that either. But I have found through a process that failures where the good stuff is. Failures where you really learn something. Failures where you elevate your spirit, your brain, every part of it. So I try to like celebrate that part, get to and show the good stuff. So anyway, so Creation is about creation. And when it's all done, we'll have like a big textbook about anecdotally how the sausage gets made from all right.
So what do you learn from failure, Brian?
Oh, that it's not failure, that it's part of the process. See, we live in this weird world, and it's been going on for a long time, so we don't even see it anymore, where the Instagram has created, and also I actually blame people like to point at Instagram, but I blame like these craft reality shows where there's like the bake-offs and such, where you're either like the winner or you lose. Like, and that's not what creation is. That's not what craft is. There's no winning and losing. It's a very strange idea that we have now put into generations of people's heads. You're either the American Idol or go fuck off. And even the premise of American Idol has shown that not to be true, because when people see American Idol, they think of Jennifer Hudson, who lost American Idol. She was not the winner, and she's the most famous person that's popped out of that situation. So I just like to point out this winning and losing thing isn't what we do. It is, we're not sports figures. We're creating content. So I look to the failure as something you can learn from. That's why what I learned is finish what you start, no matter what you're doing. Get to the end, because man, you don't even know why you're doing it. You might have a feeling you know why you're doing it, but when you get to the end, you really know why you did it, and you really know what you did right or wrong, and you really know what you have and what kind of creator you are and what voice you're saying. Like, none of this comes into focus unless you finish what you started. And it's so funny because I'm an educator, and because, you know, I get invited to speak to people. And when I started bringing up the finish what you start, the first time I said it out loud outside of my classroom was at Cleveland Institute of Art. I got offered to come over there and talk to everybody. And I said, finish what you start. And the faculty literally perked up in the audience. You could see people go, like, I just said something, and then afterwards ran up to me and said, it's like an epidemic of people not finishing what they start. It's like something has gone on with it. So there's always been people who don't finish what they start, but there's like they really felt like this wave of people not being able to finish what they start. So I've since then been on a campaign. No, finish it. I promise you, it's worth it. Even if it's you start over at the end, right? It was worth it. So yeah, finish what
I love that. I love the philosophy of completing and then just seeing how it turns out. And if it's not good, you could always revise it. Now, I
also, if you fail, if you completely fail, I'm laughing at those articles. Nobody cares. That's the thing too. It might feel bad to you in the moment. And I've actually failed on the public stage. Nobody really cares. So if it's embarrassment that's holding you back, what seems to be the biggest problem people have is just inner shame or outer shame. Nobody cares.
Part of the truth of it, and we'll touch on this in your book, is that nobody reads anything. So if you have a publication and you show it to somebody, you get points just for having completed it. They don't read it. They don't read it. But I did find this.
Good Lord. What did this asshole have to say?
So this was these were both in 2000. You can see that the image bricked here. It didn't load. This one by the world famous Jim McLaughlin. Keep It Quiet. He doesn't want his mom to know. And Torso Comic Goes to Hollywood. Remember when we did this Wizard World stuff, Brian?
Yeah, no, I remember it like it was yesterday. Now, interesting enough, I'll say about Torso, two things. The person that you're talking to right here is the person that made this book. This is about a year later, right? So I say this not like I think we're all men of an age where we know we're evolving as we go, and every 7 years you're kind of a different person altogether. So I'm like 4 versions of myself different from the person that made this version. Also, what's different in this book here and what we're talking about there is that this is turned into a period piece. Like what we're talking about here, some of the stuff that's here doesn't exist anymore. And our pop culture has evolved to a place that some of the things I'm talking about are reflecting back on something that no longer exists. And I like that as well.
Like Pauly Shore. Turns out he was never really real ever.
Yeah, made up. It was a mass hallucination.
It was a mass hallucination. But so anyway, we
so Torso,
Brian,
go ahead.
So Brian, I show that I'm going to zoom in on a few panels. This is on the left is the full panel. This was a great demonstration of how in this conversation. Why don't you tell us what happens in this conversation, which is zoomed in on the right?
What is happening in the conversation? I'm sorry.
So
what page is this?
This is the conversation where they say, "We love your work. Can you send us a copy of the book?" And you were like, "You didn't read it." And they were like, "No, but we love it."
Yeah.
Which I thought Wow, does that really happen?
It does. It really does happen. And what's great, there's an old movie. It's a Christopher Guest movie called The Big Picture. I highly recommend it. You can find this clip on YouTube any day of the week. Martin Short does a cameo in this movie as an agent. And it's one of the great cameos of all time. He should have won an Oscar for this. It's one of those great Martin Short Nightmare Hollywood types. And he sits on, and Kevin Bacon is a brand new writer, and he takes him out to lunch and sits down and goes, Kevin, let me tell you something. I haven't read your work. I don't know anything about you, but you're a genius, and I'm never wrong about this. And literally, this is one of the great, like everyone in Hollywood quotes this to this day. It's been like 40 years. It's quotes it to get people do it to this day. They look you right in the eye and go, "You're a genius. What do you do?"
Well, I enjoyed that. There was another scene that really grabbed me. How heat equals money, which I think is pretty awesome. How does heat equal money?
I don't know. It just I know for a fact I was on a book that sold like just a few hundred copies, but people were being nice about it, and someone wrote me a check. So that's like, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, and some of it is this manifestation, not to be too weird and Portland hippie, but some of it is you're putting energy out in the world, hoping to manifest certain realities, and it can happen. Like do good work and put it out there, and you will get response. People will find it, and that's another thing about finishing what you start. That thing I just said, it doesn't happen unless you finish what you start. You don't get any response. You don't get any value to your work outside of yourself unless you finish it and find out and show it to somebody.
I never sell, when I go to Artist Alley, I never am able to sell any comics that I haven't completed. Like no one wants to pay for me to explain an idea to them. Like I've tried, I'll be like, give me $3, I'll explain the idea, but they don't go for that.
No, I've had literally people not buy a first issue, but spend $50 on the collected edition sight unseen because it's finished. So I know you like it. And with indie, and I know it changes over the years, but I remember in the 90s, there was definitely this feeling like, well, I don't know if you're going to be able to afford to finish it, so I don't want to commit to it. So I'm like, yeah, but if you don't commit to it, I'm not going to be able to afford to finish it. So it's
that vicious circle, right?
Yeah, and I know there's a version of that continues today, but that is frustrating. But I get it. It's just the reality of what would happen.
So one of the things that's notable, and you see it here on the left, is your artful use of dialogue to control the eye across the page. And what was so amazing to me was this was like sitting with you at a pub, which I've never done, so I can't say, oh, remember that time we sat at a pub, but it felt like
we hung out at Wizard World ChicagoCon 2000.
I think we did. I think we did, but I don't know if we spent a long time. But like this felt like a really, hey Brian, tell that great story. It had that feel, but what you did with controlling the eye on the page with the dialogue, it really is part of the art. Which I just want all of the people who are looking at this to say, look at what Brian has done, deconstruct the pages to get a greater appreciation of not just the pictures that you chose, but also the way you artfully placed all of the dialogue.
This is all stolen from Howard Chaykin and others of his ilk, and Walt Simonson and all the people who were in the studio. They would tend to design the page, and I forget who said it, but if you design if you really give thought to where the dialogue goes, when people turn the page and they see it's been artfully placed, it says, we got it. We have it under control. Just sit back and enjoy the story. Right.
Yeah. Chaykin's a master of lettering art craft, isn't he?
Yeah. Ken Bruzenek and all of that was very inspirational. Like when you turn the page and you just feel like, oh yeah, this is a lot of words. Like there's a version where a lot of words looks like a big pain in the ass to read. Like I've seen that where people just plop a big balloon of text in the middle of the page. Okay. And then sometimes it can feel like a chore, but here it feels like, at least in my heart, oh, there's beats here, and I've given some thoughts to how the beat should be read and how the thought should be separated, and there's an S shape here, so I'm like wanting to control your eye, and it's making it like a nice little wave of movement. It's all being done on very, and also it's, even though this is all being done on computer, you want it to feel more organic, and so that some of the more organic shapes to how things are laid out have to do with that as well. I will say though, as I've evolved, I may attack this page differently than I would today than I would have back then. Some of this is like, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm looking at, just to be very honest, I'm looking at some of the limitations of Photoshop 2 and other things that are much easier to produce in Clip Studio and such today. So some of it is I'm looking at myself reaching past my technical difficulties and finding solutions to problems, which I'm proud of, but at the same time, I wish I actually didn't have the technical difficulties. Hope that makes sense.
It does. It's the technical learning that you did, which was the stepping stone that enabled you to move on as a creator to create more modern versions. I thought this was extremely interesting. I'm guessing you statted this as you zoomed
statted
in.
And fucked with it. I believe I statted it and cleaned it up as we went.
What was the first thing you said? You statted it and
fucked with it.
Is that a technical term? Is that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a technical term.
That came out in Photoshop 3, I think. But what I like about
the fucking filter.
What I liked about this was this. It had a very indie art film, which was indie film doesn't have a lot of money. What they have to make up for is something else. And it felt like, okay, here's a guy who's experimenting. And I will tell you here, this is a true story, funny story. When we first met, you mailed me a videotape, which you mentioned in the liner notes at the end, or somewhere, Visions of Light.
Yes.
You mailed that to me as a VHS. You were like, check this out. And I was like, holy shit, this is great. And that was an influential videotape.
Yeah, 100%, to the point where I have, we haven't talked about it yet, but coming like this Thursday to Substack is Fortune and Glory, the musical, a brand new graphic novel sequel to this, basically a sequel, but continuing this, what happened to me. And the hook of Fortune and Glory, the musical, is in 2004. I was hired to be the writer of Spider-Man, the Broadway musical, Turn Off the Dark, which is kind of legendary and infamous. You can Google away and see all the stories about what happened there if you don't know the story. Some people know it now a little bit more because George Santos came out last week and said he was Spider-Man or something. But the reality is that I was actually involved with the production, and I'm actually also Jewish. So I am all the things that that guy says he is. The ridiculousness of someone like me who has no theater experience or Broadway experience or musical experience being hired to write a Broadway musical for Bono to do the music for, it was so ridiculous and so over the top that I used it as the basis to tell another autobiographical story. And it's the hook in which we go back in time and talk about like how all of the things we're talking about right now, about how we got where we're going.
I really feel like there was somebody like a studio head with a big fat cigar, like, it's so crazy, it just might work. Get that?
Yeah, well, you're going to find out on Thursday.
That guy is something else. I never read a thing he wrote, but I understand he's a genius.
No, but like, it's a perfect example actually, because like, why did they hire me? Like, why? Okay, I'm writing the Spider-Man comic, but Broadway, it's not a comic book. Why was I hired? And that, I talk about it in the graphic novel. My wife is a huge musical theater person, and I'm not. And that was kind of one of the bummers of our relationship, is that I would try to go to musicals with her and not really get into it. But here I am working in a medium that is often denigrated and looked down upon by other people. They look at comics as a low art, even though we know it's not. So how could I be so judgmental of another art form? So I talk about trying to like get into it with musical theater and trying to like be part of be part of that.
I want you to write a song called "How Can I Be So Judgmental About Another Person's Artwork?" And I just
That would be
no, but that's part of the journey. You relate to it through that. Like, comics is to this day, people don't know humans make comics. It's amazing. Like,
Mike's still trying to. ChatGPT is making it for us. Yeah, that's right, Mike. All right, so Brian, we're going to continue on because we have a limited amount of time.
Oh yes.
This is another one of my favorite scenes where a producer didn't believe that Elliot Ness was a real person.
This is a verbatim true story. This is word for word true.
But is Elliot Ness, or was he actually a real person?
I don't think so.
Who is to say? Really, it's hard to tell.
Obviously, Kevin Costner played him, so it has to be true. So,
my friend was obsessed to me about this. This part of my life remains unchanged. Mark and I are still very dear friends. Last week, we just re-upped our option for Torso with Working Title Pictures. The development of Torso as a production continues. It may find its way. I mean, what may have been holding it up all these years was that it's not a movie. It's a 8-episode event streaming show. Like, that seems to be like the shape it might have been. So we'll see.
Maybe it's a musical.
That I'm still dealing with.
Maybe it's a musical. Maybe it's a musical.
Maybe it's right.
I was kind of thinking you combine Marvel with Torso, and it'll come out in the year 2099. So it'll be Torso 2099, maybe long after we're all dead. Why not? And then,
but I will tell you, we have an amazing director attached, Corin Hardy, who is the showrunner of Gangs of London. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Excellent television on AMC Plus, coming out of Britain. Wonderful guy. We literally just before the pandemic were in Cleveland, working on Torso and digging in and doing all the research over again. It was fantastic. So we'll see if it ever happens.
What was his thoughts on Cleveland?
Oh, it was great. Cleveland's a great place for someone from England to visit because there's a lot of similarities to London and there's a lot of non-similarities. So it was great to share that with him.
It was funny. The first time I went to Cleveland, the only real view I had of Cleveland was from Howard the Duck,
which is Toronto. The movie, that's Toronto.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because I remember in the 80s being at a screening, an advanced screening, because we're talking about going to movies before they come out, an advanced screening, and you see the Toronto skyline, and they say, Cleveland. You're like, no, it's not.
Mike, have you ever been to Cleveland yet?
I've never been to Cleveland.
Are you ever going to leave California?
I don't know. I might be stuck here. I don't know. The weather.
You're not stuck there. You can travel again. All right. Last scene. I another one. You mentioned you and Mark. What was great about this scene, among other scenes, was the way you repeated panels, but also the way you were really honest about how you choked on your first pitch.
Oh yeah, and we were talking about that's something I like to celebrate. You were talking about failure, like, so part of our weird world, you may have felt this in your world as well, is that you're spending a lot of time alone in your room working on your craft and getting excellent at it. And when you do it, your reward is you now have to perform. You now have to pitch, right? We talk about this in class a lot in Portland State, because more and more it is becoming the thing where people go, oh, what do I have to do? Like, because it's like the opposite of what some of us want to do. Like, I know here we're all talking very gregariously, but left to my own device, I just sit home alone and not speak, right? And that's what I wanted. Like, that's why I wanted to make comics, right? But to make the comics, you have to go out and I even did this, like, because even like I did this bit in our book cover with David Mack. It's a weird feeling, like your reward for being excellent is now you have to sit on a stage in front of hundreds of people and talk about yourself. And that is, for some people, that's the dream. For most of us, it is. And
you don't have a pencil, you don't have a keyboard, you just.
It's a completely different muscle. Like now when we're doing improv stand-up on a stage, that's not what this is, what we do. And it's a lot like in the old days, they talk about like running for president and being president are two different things. Like campaigning and doing the paperwork is two different jobs. Totally. So.
Well, what I think is really important, and one of the big takeaways is that the more you did it, the better you got.
Well, no, but I will say is I like to like celebrate that failure, because pitching something you really believe in, it like you can just walk in a room and like sometimes the room's really rooting for you and it's going to go great, and sometimes you walk in a room and the disinterest is so heavy. Like you were put into a room under almost false pretenses. Sometimes Mike's nodding almost like it's going to hurt his back eventually. But I've been put into rooms where I was told everyone in this room is a friend. The checkbook is open. It's going to be great. And you walk in and they're like, "Who are you? Why are you here? Where's my lunch?" Right? and you're like, "Oh man, I really thought this was going to be a good one." And there's been times where I've like asked for a meeting, they've taken the meeting, and I fucked up the meeting. Just fucked it up so bad that I start laughing during the meeting like a stand-up who's just, oh my God, I'm bombing so hard. Let's just live in it. Let's just bathe in it. And I had a meeting during the pandemic, a meeting I wanted with an organization. And I asked for it. I said, why? They said, oh, we would love to have that conversation with you. Got on Zoom, and it ended up being one of those terrible pandemic days where no one should be talking to anybody. We're just like, this is a bad day today. This is the like, we're not like, we should just be in our space. And instead we're trying to power through like life is normal. And it just wasn't working. And I should have just stopped. I just like, also, Mike, we're bald. You can't stop the shininess from appearing. Like, oh, the flop sweat starts appearing, and Zoom really captures it in all its glory. And I laugh because it's amazing that you could do this for years and years and still just trash a meeting. Like a comedians do it too. Like Jerry Seinfeld talk about like, I'm bombing. Why am I bombing? Like I know this by heart, and I love it so much. And I don't I share it to kind of like just let everyone know it's okay. It's okay. Just do the next meeting. You'll learn from it. Just you get back on the horse. It's okay. All right. And also, like, that meeting went so bad that I know they hung up and went, oh, what the fuck was that? And there's a point where I enjoy that as well. Like, okay, we didn't achieve the goal, but at least you got something out of it, which is an anecdote. So there you go.
I think where they were like, give that guy a Broadway play. See what he does with that. All right. So here we go. Let's make it through the rest of the slide presentation, because I did work hard on this, Brian.
You did. I appreciate this.
Yeah, there was a lot of love in this. You added a lot of background material. What was the purpose of this? I mean, you pretty much had a blank slate. You could do what you wanted. Why did you? Oh,
I'm a process junkie. I'm thinking you can probably tell that from the get-go. Like I love, also this was being created in a wash of laser discs with director's commentary on them. Like that's all I was doing while I was drawing this, was listening to Blade Runner, director's cut, all the versions and all the director's commentary. And I love other people's process. I feel it's a really beautiful way to share your real self with each other. So anywhere I can share my shit, I do it as well. I feel it's like a not paired forward. I don't know what it like. We're supposed to share. I just feel like I feel connected to people who share their work, and I know that people feel connected to me for doing the same thing. And particularly, and also there was a lot of things here where like maybe you don't believe me, and here let me get into it a little bit and tell you.
I'd like to just share that Mike is wearing a robe right now, Brian.
Oh, I by the way, I will be wearing a robe as soon as I'm done with all of my things.
All right, well, good.
I'll Lebowski the shit out of anything. There you go.
Real quick, I loved your movie posters. I just thought they were so much fun, and it just showed your love of the meta storytelling.
Thank you. I just did a bunch of Broadway musical versions of this for the upcoming Fortune Glory. So I have me as Billy Elliot, me as Little Orphan Annie. I did a lot. Hair.
I love it. I think it shows a lot of spirit and being a good sport. Brian, we ask this of every single one of our guests. What is one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your career?
You know what? My number one is finish what you start, and we've already talked about that. But I did not receive that, but I was wired to do it. So I didn't need to be taught it. I only needed to learn it post. I think going back to and rewording a little bit, that failure is good. That failure means you tried. That failure means you learned something, and it's going to be better next time. And every single one of your heroes, no matter what they do for a living, they also failed. They also, hey, guess what? John Lennon still has a box of shitty songs he's not going to release in public, right? Like they know they're not, you know, but those shitty songs got us that, right?
Yeah.
So just do it and celebrate it, and don't kick yourself. And the only thing you should be mad about yourself is not allowing yourself the time to finish what you start. I think creative people have to wire themselves that it's eating, pooping, sleeping, and making stuff in equal. And you wouldn't take away those other three things from your day, but creative people seem to be able to, or are sometimes forced to, remove the creative part of their day because it seems the least necessary. But that's not true. It is maybe even the most necessary of all of those subjects. So you have to allow yourself, not to the punishment of your friends and family, but make sure that every day is allowed to have the time and space to be truly creative and working on your craft. You have to sometimes, I think Emerald Leonard has a quote about fighting for it to the death. I won't go so dramatic about that, but I do think no one will do it for you. You have to do that part yourself. Someone might feed you, someone might put you to bed, but no one's going to set you down in front of a piece of paper or a typewriter and say, get to work. You have to do it for yourself, and you have to make it as important as those other things to you. And don't be a dick about it. But I've turned to my friends, and like even friends or other creators, to go, no, I have to do this with my time now. And they go, great. I get it. It's part of who you are. Also, it's part of my mental health. It's part of other people's creative mental health. I'm a better person when I create. I'm a better person when I dig in and dive. So may that be the thing that gets you past worrying about failure, is that you're helping yourself in the moment by creating. You're actually figuring some shit out, right? And actually like getting to a better space. So these are the things that I celebrate, and I want other people to celebrate them too. I know that certain people look at my life and say, well, yeah, but you're talking from a place of privilege, and right at the moment I am. But in the 90s, the person that did this was still drawing characters for a living and doing anything to make a buck. This did not pay my bills. I had to make time for it, and nobody asked me to do it. No one said it's time for you to do your Hollywood tell-all. Man who's created nothing. And because that's the other thing, there's very few books about Hollywood about someone who's done nothing and in that space. So I say, yeah, make sure you take care of yourself and give yourself that space to do it. And adding on to that, if I can babble on, there's a book by John Cleese from Monty Python called On Creativity, and I highly recommend it. It's a very short book. Oh, he's got it right there. Good book. It's a very short book, but it gets right to the point. And its big point is that the adult mind is not it's not built for creativity. The creativity is, and what comes with it, the whimsical playfulness that you need to be truly creative, is almost a child's purview. That's what children do. But as we become adults, even though that voice is still in our head, we still also have to pay our bills and feed our family and blah, blah, blah. And with that, responsibility can come in conflict with creativity. And sometimes you need to spend some time to really get to the creative self. Right? Really like get there. And you can't just flip a switch, sit down and be your best creative self. Sometimes you need to sit down and do some Legos, sit down, go for a bike ride. You have to like get there, and you have to allow that to happen, and not just sit there and go, create, make it. You got to like just get almost into a fugue state, into a beautiful meditative state where you can really, the characters start talking for you. It happened to me last night, and it was one of those days where I'm like, oh, it ain't gonna happen today. This is too much shit, too much real life. And then all of a sudden, 2 a.m, I got into a warmer spot where I was actually writing, like really writing, and that was kind of great. So I like tell people, just be patient with yourself. The world is so loud and so chaotic. It takes a while to be you, just to be a writer. So allow that to happen. So those are the things that I would certainly sit myself down and go, don't stress out about it. Just be there, be creative, go on a bike ride. That's the right thing to do. Typing isn't writing. It's just one part of it.
So. I love it. Brian, we're almost done. I got to get you out of here on time. You got a school bus to drive. I understand.
I do.
So
listen, I honestly can tell you, I absolutely adore this, and I feel super guilty about having had to delay this. So I hope we can gather again together and talk about whatever else. We're just, in my mind, between us, just at the surface.
We're just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
we don't really hit our stride until Mike starts to take off the robe, and I think
yes,
does it go off?
It goes like very dramatic, very theatrically. He does that, so people can find you in the places on the online. You've always been very active online, but obviously they can go check this out. Go buy the book. You can find it at darkhorse.com. It is coming out very soon. I have read it. Mike actually, this is a rare time, Brian. Mike actually did pre-work. He's agreed to do the show as long as he doesn't have to do any work. He read the book. You loved it, right, Mike?
I thought it was great. I'd heard about it for years and I never read it. And then I said, when I sat down to read it, I said, I'm sorry I hadn't read it before. It was awesome.
I thank you. You're the only person that's talked to me about this book who hasn't singled out the panel about my wife reacting to the first check we ever got.
Well, it was a good scene, but I figured it's a family show, and you have 4 kids, so you know.
Yeah, those are the kind of jokes you make before you realize you're going to have 4 kids.
They were like,
"Yeah,
Mommy, what does Daddy mean by that?" Never mind. So
it is. My adult daughter's in film school now, and it's very funny to we just have to. Yeah, your parents are idiots.
Yeah. You just give her a copy, you rip out a page. And if you don't know what we're talking about, go out, buy the book. And that is it. Brian, thank you so much. It was wonderful to see you again.
It's great to see you. And again, just so people know who follow you, we knew each other in another lifetime many years ago at Wizard World, and you were absolutely delightful. One of the good guys. So just thank you for everything. You couldn't have been nicer to me at a time where I didn't know what the fuck was going on. So thank you for being there for me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. Brian, we're going to put you in the green room. You're welcome to all the Twizzlers that you can eat, and just stay tuned. We'll give a quick wrap up. So thanks again, Brian.
Thank you, everyone. See you online.
Mike, we managed to pull it off, and I don't think we said anything too stupid, right?
Not too stupid. At least I don't think so.
Hold on, I asked Brian. Brian, we didn't say anything stupid.
No, I was just thinking. I do that too. Every conversation I have to hang up and go, all right, let's list the 5 stupid things I said. And I know you were. I think we're cool. I think we're both cool.
All right, good. I'm gonna put Brian back in. Mike, that was a lot of fun. I think we're very grateful for the Dark Horse people for bringing Brian, and I hope everybody checks out the book. We'll see you guys next week.